This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Anyone, any questions, guys, before I can get started? And I have a couple of emails that I need to respond back to. I was a little busy yesterday, so I couldn't respond back. So anyone who did not get a response, please expect one today. I'll go ahead and reply back to your email out there. So yes, with that, any questions that I can take? Anyone, any questions that I can take? Anything that you tried, probably not get, and etc. Did you all try this particular JSON? So this is what we were doing yesterday. Is that sorry, this is a text file, sorry, but let's go into JSON, and this is what we were doing yesterday, is that we were understanding how to write a basic JSON file, how to write a very simple JSON file, and how to read that particular JSON file using a PowerShell script. So we said get content, and we got that particular content, converted it from JSON, understood a couple of things out there, and etc. So let's do that one real quick time so that we'll recap that particular concept, and then we can move forward from there. So I'll just mute the guys online. Please use the chat box to, let's say, put your questions in there. And when I, let's say, take a break, I'll just go ahead and, let's say, look at that particular questions and address those things as well. So let me open up my PowerShell console, and let me start typing my PowerShell script today. And this is what I'll do. I would first want to read from that particular JSON and just do some write host statements. Yesterday, I went ahead, wrote the entire script telling how do you create the resource group and storage accounts and etc. Today, I'll just, let's say, do the read, and just I'll just write all the contents out there. Contents, that's the only thing that I'm going to do. And how do you, let's say, create a resource group that you already know, that using the new hyphen az store resource group command, new hyphen az storage account command, you can also go ahead and, let's say, read your or create your resource groups, create your storage accounts, and all these things out there. So in order to, let's say, read a particular file, what is the command, guys? To read a particular file, what exactly would be, let's say, the command to read this? Anyone? I have a file that is sitting in a directory called atm file handle and etc. Get hyphen content.
Get
Not
content.
get content, exactly. So now to, let's say, read something, I simply run something known as a get content, get hyphen, let's say, something like content out here. So to get that particular content, and I go ahead give a file path to it, give a path to it, and identify where the file is. For example, I have the file, let's say, into something like that particular atm file handle. So let's go here, and this is where I have the file. So I'll copy this entire path, place this in. This is the path, not the file. I do a forward slash. I then get all the files that is there, and I want to read that particular file called what? Configuration.json file. So if I run this out, I very simply get a raw JSON file out here. It's a raw data that I get. In order to start interacting with this data, I will, let's say, use something known as a pipeline here. Pass all this output as an input to another command called what? Convert from hyphen. I want to convert this entirely from a JSON, and I want to get the content out there. And if I execute this, now I have the content that I can interact with, called team name, RG name, storage name, and all these things
The
out there.
in the con
Yes, go ahead, please. Now I have, let's say, all this content out here, and I can now start interacting with this. So in order to interact with this, what I'll do is whatever output that I'm getting here, I'll store it in a variable called dollar content is equal to get content, something like this. Guys, can you please go on mute if you're not already on? Let me mute you out. So right. So now you have something called content is equal to get content. The path is something like this. And if I execute this, everything that you saw as the output is being stored inside this particular parameter called dollar content. And if you execute dollar content, I get the same output. So I'm taking all the output, storing in the dollar content out here. Now the thing here is that if I want to interact with this particular object, or if I want to interact with this particular properties, I can say write hyphen host. I'll say name of the team is dollar of dollar content dot team name. Now filter that particular properties for this particular parameter called dollar content. So dollar content now has all these properties called team name, storage name, RG name, and etc. Using a dot, I can now filter it out. So now I'll say write host, say name of the RG is dollar of dollar content dot RG name. Say write host. I can list down all the properties by using this particular write host command. I can say name of the location, or location being location in which it's being created. I'll say location, and I can say this dollar of dollar content dot location. So I can now filter down all these properties, and let me go here and I'll say write host, say SKU or replication. I can say dollar of dollar content dot SKU name. I can say write host storage account name. So I can do all these things using this particular properties up here. So storage account name, dollar of dollar content dot storage account name out here. So I can have all these properties inside this one. And now if I execute all these things out here, this is the output that I get. Name of the team, name of the RG, name of, let's say, the location, name of the, or the replication tier, or the storage account that I want to go ahead and create this out. All these things is what I now get. Let's say I can go ahead and, let's say, interact with these things. And yesterday what I did is that to extend this, I went ahead and I wrote a command, or I went ahead and wrote a script to go ahead and create something out there. So not this one, but I went ahead and I wrote a script telling if that particular resource group exists, then don't create it. If it doesn't, then do a new hyphen AZ, so AZ resource group, and create a resource group out there. Applied the same thing for storage account, applied the same thing for container as well. This is how I am reading, not from the parameters, but from an input file out here that is given to me by a team called as a development team as such. This is what a team has given me right now. Yes, any questions still here that I can take? Anyone, any questions still here that I can take? Anyone, online, offline, any questions?
Hi, Kiran.
Just a second. Yes, go ahead, Pawan. Let's come back to
Actually I created the same way yesterday, but container is not created. Only
you.
storage account has been created.
What is the error that you're getting when you're trying to create a container?
Error is not getting, but it stopped
Mhm.
at the storage account. Container not created.
Okay, did you send me across that particular script? Because I can only tell you looking at your script. So did you send me the script across to me?
No, no, no.
Yeah, please do.
I will
Because
send you today.
yeah, sure, please do, because I
Okay.
can only comment on a particular script looking at that particular script out there. So once you do
Okay.
send me that, I can highlight where exactly or what exactly is missing.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Any more questions here? Now, this is a very simple JSON file, guys. A very simple JSON file that I went ahead and written. Before I move forward, are we clear, or are we all good on how to, let's say, read this particular JSON? Is this okay before I move forward? You can also mention file path, meaning in here you mean? You can also mention file path. Sorry, only it isn't? Only if it is in the local. You can mention the file path, not a problem. You can mention the file path, tell where the file path is and all these things out there. Correct. That file path may not be in your system. Yes, that's an issue. So that's the reason you give a network share path. network share path and all these things, so that I can go into that particular network, get all that particular contents, and let's say take the files and upload this out to. Now this is just for one team. I'm now talking about telling that this is just for one team called development. What if QA team comes into picture and says, you know what, I want also a different file? Shall I say I'll just copy all these things and say QA config.json, paste all these things and say this is now QA, this is QA-RG, this is QA storage, this is QA container, this is, let's say, something like standard GRS, not LRS, and this is something like cool or something like this. Can I do now a QA JSON or a QA config dot, let's say, JSON out here? Now let's say some other team comes into picture. Let's say something like a DevOps team comes into picture. I'll say DevOps JSON dot or DevOps config dot JSON. And now here I need to, let's say, write something like DevOps. Here I need to write something like DevOps RG, and I need to change all these properties to reflect something like DevOps out there. So let's say tomorrow one more team comes into picture. I again need to create one more file. The problem is not the file creation. The problem is maintenance of all these files. Now I have so many files out here, meaning I also need to have so many scripts out there. Each and every script for one particular file to go ahead, read this out, and let's say go ahead all these things out. Let's imagine that you have 20 different teams in your organization. Then here you will have 40 files, because two files for a team, right? One PowerShell, one JSON, right? This is what we are doing right now. I have one PowerShell file, one JSON file for each and every team. So I need to have now, I need to handle 40 different files out here to maintain all these teams out here. My question is, or the question here is that, why are we maintaining even so many files out here? Why can't we put all the properties in one single file? What is the issue in maintaining that? Or what is, let's say, the thing in, let's say, doing that? It seems it's simple, like, you know what, you have an Excel sheet that you've given to me. I'm now asking you to, let's say, give me individual Excel sheets for individual teams. It'll become really difficult for you to maintain all these things out there, because the amount of files that you, let's say, write over a period of time are firstly very repetitive in nature. Secondly, the maintenance burden falls on you. This is something that I don't want to do. I'll, let's say, delete these files out here. I don't even want to, let's say, come with these files. So I'll just go ahead, delete these files, and let me delete the QA JSON also. So I'll delete these files out here. And what I'll say is that I now do not have one single JSON object. This is what one single JSON object out here, which is telling, or which is giving me the configuration for a team called development. Now I'm telling I have three different JSON objects, one for development, one for QA, one for a DevOps team out here. So what I'll do is, let me, let's say, cut this out completely, and let me declare a JSON object called as a JSON array. This is now an array of objects that I'm declaring. It's not just single object that I'm declaring. This was a single object. This was a single JSON object. Now I want to declare an array of JSON objects out here. This is now an array. So what I'll do, I'll start with a simple key called storage config. This can be anything. Again, I'm just giving a key, something called as a storage config out here. And earlier what we did, we said JSON is always what? Key value pair. So this is a key and this is the value against that particular key. Now I'm telling that this key is not a simple string value. This key is an array value. And how do I declare an array in JSON? Is by using open and close square brackets. This is the declaration of array in JSON. Inside this array, I cut that out earlier. I'll now paste this out. This array is now representing one entire object called development. What I'll do is that now, if you see, the advantage that you have when you write, let's say, JSON with VS Code is that you can collapse things. You have these, let's say, things out here. You can see where the array starts, where it ends. It's telling storage config is starting at line number, let's say, 2, ending at line number 12. Everything between 2 and 12 is what? One single object out here. Now what I'll do is I'll add one more object out here. Color variation is also there. Yes, array is actually a purple color and this is a blue color string object and all these things. So what I'll do is I'll add one more object out here, which is for a QA team. So I just copied my development team out here. And at line number 11, I put a comma telling that I want to add one more object inside this, particular array. Add one more object. This is now for QA. I'll say this is QA out here. This is QA. This is QA. I'll say this is GRS. Instead of let's say LRS, instead of let's say something like LRS, I would say this is GRS out here. And instead of East US, I'll probably tell this is West US. Because the QA team probably needs that particular storage in West US out there. Just scroll down. I'll again copy this out. Again put a comma here. Whenever you want to declare another object, put a comma, enter, third object comes into picture. So now if I do a DevOps out here, I'll say this is DevOps. I'll say instead of QA, this is DevOps out here. And this is DevOps out there. Probably even DevOps wants the same thing in West US, or you can also change this property to something like North Europe. Three different storage accounts, three different configuration of the storage accounts, and you can add anything out here, not a problem. You can add any configuration out here. I'm just saving this file. So let me do one thing. Since this is dev, I'll just put something like dev, and here I'll just put something like a dev container out here, because I've been doing the same thing for QA and etc. So maintaining the consistency out here. So now I have the JSON object called as a storage config, which is an array containing dev, QA, and DevOps configurations out there. And each and everything in the array is an object. So the entire dev is the object, QA is one of the objects, DevOps is one of the objects. So I have what? Three different objects in this particular array. When I say object, each and every object has its own properties called team name, RG name, storage name, and etc. So there are this thing that I'm talking about. In a JSON, it's always something like this. This is a JSON array. So I'll say array. An array is always and always represented by something known as a square bracket, inside which there can be multiple objects. This can be an object. And if you want to declare one more object, put a comma, declare one more object out here. So let me take this out. And each and every object can have its own properties. Key value pair once again. Each and every object can have its own property. That is what I've represented here. This is the array inside which you have three different objects. Each and every object has its own property called team name, RG name, storage account name, and all these things out here. Let me close this out. The question is that then how do I write a PowerShell for this? How do I read this out? Let's understand that as well. Let's come back into our PowerShell, and this line remains the same. Get content remains the same. So let me write it from the scratch once again. So I first want to read this out. That's it. I want to read that particular, or I want to read the JSON file. That's the first thing that I'm actually focused on. Creation of the storage account, creation of the resource groups can come later. We just need to understand how to read this. Creation is easier. Creation is a simple line called new hyphen AZ resource group or new hyphen AZ storage account and etc. In order to read this, I'll give a value called data is equal to, again, this can be any parameter, data, XYZ, ABC, whatever it is. I'm just calling this as a data because I'm reading some data out here. I'll say get hyphen content hyphen path, and just take that particular path out here. So I have this path out here, / m file config.json. And if you look at this, and let me do a CLS, and let me say data out here. Data now has what? All the raw files. In order to convert this, I will put a pipe here. I'll say what? Convert from hyphen JSON. I'm converting all this object into a JSON, or I'm converting all this from a JSON into something called as a PS custom object, PowerShell custom object out here. Let me CLS. Let me run this out once again. So now let's see what is there inside data. And do you see how the data is being represented right now? It's saying the key is what? Storage config. The value of this one is what? The entire array that you mentioned here. That array is nothing but those three objects out here. Now, if I do one thing, in order to look into that particular array, so yesterday what we did is that we had a very simple object. So in order to look at the properties of that particular object, we said what? Content.team name, content. Something like this. Now I cannot directly do a team name. Sorry, I cannot directly do a team name because team name is sitting inside what? That array called what? Storage config. In order to call that particular property, what I'll do is that I'll say I'll call the first property whatever that I see. So if I do a dollar data dot, do you see what? Storage config. And if I now execute this one, do you now see all these things out here? Called team name, RG name, storage name. This is all the first object, and these are all the properties of the first object that belongs to a team called development. These are all properties that are belong to a team called what? QA. These are all the properties that belong to a team called what? DevOps. Three teams out here. And just in case if you need to know what is the count of the array, you can do a dollar data dot storage dot count. You can also see the count of this particular array out here. Three objects, because you have three different, let's say, objects out there, three different, let's say, teams out there are giving you that particular object. So that's how you can go ahead get this particular array. So I now said data dot storage config. I'm getting all these things out here. Now what I can do is that before I move forward, let me assign this entire value to a different parameter, saying dollar object, because everything that I'm getting is an object out here. I'll say dollar object is equal to something like this. And if I now execute, whatever is there in data.storage config is stored in something called what? Simple. I just took all that output and put it inside this one. Now let's see. If I want to write the team name, let's say write host. This is what I'm really interested into. Let's first understand how a write host really works out here, and then let's say go ahead and understand this out. I'll say team name is what? In this case, what should be the team name? How should I give the team name here? How do you think should I get the team name here? Let's compare it earlier. That's the reason I was asking whether everyone is following this one. How did I do it earlier? Content dot team name. Did I do this? So now what should I do? Three
Dollar
names are there.
object dot team.
Dollar of dollar object dot team name, right? So let's do that. So dollar of dollar object, because this is the object that I'm looking into, dot team name, name. Okay, name. What am I getting right now? Three teams: development, QA, and DevOps. Why am I getting this? Is because there are three objects with the same property, team name out here. Then what should I do now? I just need one name of this one.
Array
Exactly,
of a
for
zero,
each.
array of one. Oh,
Yes, you can do a for, or you can do a for each as well, because object here is an array of things. It's not just one simple object. It's an array of objects. So if I do a for each on top of it, I'll say for each, I'll say dollar value in dollar object I'll say team name or write host. Team name is that instead of giving object out here, I'll say value. Now I'll execute this out. Team name is development, team name is QA, team name is DevOps. Using this logic, what I can do is this. I'll say write host RG name is dollar of dollar value dot RG name. I can say write host storage account name is dollar of dollar value dot storage account name. I can say write host and I can write all the properties out here called location. I can say something like dollar of dollar value dot location. Write host replication dollar of dollar value dot SKU, and I can do all these properties out here. I can go and write all these various properties out here. I can say write host container is dollar of dollar value dot container name. I can do access tier. I can do all these things out here. And if I run this loop, says team name is development, team name something like this. So it is giving me all these values. Team name is development, RG name is dev RG, storage account name is something, location is something, replication is something, container again, then team name is QA, RG name, etc. So now it's looking a little clumsy. I don't know when one object is ending, when the other object is starting. So what I'll do is I'll simply do, before I start this out, I'll say write host and I'll just put some pattern out here. That's it. Some kind of a line separator out here. And if I run this out, looks better. I know where the development team is ending, where the QA team is starting, and etc. So just a simple line out there will help you out to resolve this out. So now I know that the team name is development, RG name is dev RG, storage account name is something, location is this one, team is QA, and all these things out. Now I can write my logic. If we are able to follow till here, from here, inside this same for each loop, I can now start my entire logic telling whether to check whether the resource group is there or not, then created, storage account is there or not, then created, container is there or not, then go ahead and create this out. This is what I can do within this particular for each block. But before I move ahead, is everyone able to follow what I did till here on how did I write this till here? Are we okay till here? Sorry, the location in colon, this one. No, I'm just representing that location is equal to something. So I'm just putting a colon just to write it out. That's it. You don't have to really have this colon out here. Not mandatory, but if it's not, it look a little clumsy. That's the reason I just put location like that. So location west US. So I just put a colon, so it will just represent that location is equal to something like that. That's it.